Great. Thank you very much, guys. Have a great
Спасибо
conference.
большое. Желаю всем успехов на конференции.
For the ICENS conference. It is unfortunate that I'm not there in person, but I hope our conditions would change and we will be able to meet again in person in the very near future. So the goal of reperfusion therapy really is to make sure that we reduce neurologic deficit as much as is possible, to reduce the core to a minimum, to limit the expansion of the penumbra. And there are a variety of figures out there in terms of how much damage is being caused and how many people are being affected. The clear consensus is that we are currently treating a very, very small number of people compared to the potential number that can be benefited by mechanical thrombectomy. So part of that is because a lot of these, part of this is because many of these methodologies are not currently within the guidelines. So pediatric patients, people with low NIH stroke score, people with very poor looking CT scans with poor aspects, time beyond 24 hours, posterior circulation, distal territories such as ACA, PCA, MCA, tandem occlusions. These are not part of guidelines. Some are being treated, some are not. So what do we know? Well, we know that the data currently exists to suggest that a lot of these populations can be helped. Here's a study that looked at thrombectomy with thrombolysis alone, and there was clear significance in terms of those that got thrombolyzed or not. There is smaller data for mechanical thrombectomy in exactly the same way. This is by Vince Constellat and his group out of Montpellier and other collaborators, which showed that aspects of 5 on DWI, there was a clear improvement, clear significant improvement in those that were treated with thrombectomy than those who were not. And this was true for MCA, distal, proximal, tandem, and terminus occlusions. This is another study. This is now by a larger group out of multiple centers in Canada and France, led by Jan Gralla and Urs Fischer out of Basel, Switzerland, where they looked at the CT scan-based aspect score. And again, low aspect scores of 0 to 5. And if you look at the thrombectomy population, they all universally do better than those that were not treated with thrombectomy. There's no question about it. And these results are true whether they're MRI-based or CT-based. So really quite powerful data to suggest that these patients should be included in guidelines, and we have ongoing trials that I'll talk about in the end. Basilar artery occlusion seems to suggest that MRS of 0 to 2 is still possible in 40% of these patients, whereas the natural history in this meta-analysis, which is still being worked up by us, the outcomes for natural history were quite significantly varied, but that depended on where the occlusion was cited. Now, there is a significant cohort of ICAD in here, which complicates natural history of LVO versus ICAD. But that said, there is clear value for thrombectomy that probably is going under recognized. And this is a population where randomized trials have been attempted in China and Brazil without significant success. What about distal occlusions? These are not part of the guidelines either. And it is a paper that we published a while back, which demonstrated that we could really demonstrate quite significant effectiveness in terms of revascularization ability. However, at least with stent retrievers, there was a higher risk of asymptomatic hemorrhage, which has been recognized by other parties as well. Then there is a variety of issues with workflow which need to be considered, which will also facilitate the volume which is being increased. Again, are these part of clear guidelines? Well, some of them are in terms of go to the closest stroke center, but the value of platforms such as Viz and others such as the Schema View are currently not part of the standard guidelines, and I think that can make a big difference. Then there's always the hope for these early detection in the field. This is a helmet made by Cerebrotech. There's some other contemporary technologies looking in the same space as well. And then there is obviously the value of a mobile stroke unit. So I think these are all things that are happening simultaneously that will create value as we go forward. So where are we with endovascular treatment? I think we are still in the early phases. You know, we started with IA thrombolysis and then wire manipulation. Then some of you might remember the Mercy device, then the penumbra separator with aspiration, and then the stent retriever since the Trevo and the Swift trials. But that's evolving. So there's the EmboTrap now in the US with Solitaire and Trevo. And recently we have had another addition to a stent retriever that I'll share with you in a second. The other thing that's been changing is our access pathway. So this is a tower of power, beautiful building. That's the same thing we are constructing now with stroke, where we have now a 6 French long sheet being placed with an intermediate catheter and a microcatheter and a wire for aspiration ability. These are being right-sized to the vessel that is occluded. So multiple platforms are now starting to develop a full array of these devices that can be developed for delivery. So that's how the ADAPT concept was born, that when the catheters became large enough that you could apply significant vacuum through them, you could start developing aspiration-based thrombectomy. And if it didn't work, you still were there for stent retriever. So it started off with 4, and then went to 5 max, and then went to 6 max, and then 6 max ACE, and then 071. And this has continued to march on. It keeps getting bigger and bigger. The large board becomes the conduit for you to do all the work you need with or without a stent retriever. Now we are starting to get up all the way up to the 88 phase, where this is now the large distal platform by Imperative Care called the Zoom and TrackStars platforms. And you can see there's a lot more sort of engineering that goes into these. And here is a couple of videos I want to show you. This is an M1 occlusion. There's an 071. Look at how nicely it's going up without a wire or catheter or anything. And now goes the 088, which is being advanced over the 071. And look at how nicely it has tracked all the way up to the face of the clot. And there it is, the 88 sitting right next to the 71. The challenge becomes, okay, what do you aspirate through at that point? Then there's evolution on the balloon guide strategy as well. This is the Walrus balloon guide, which gives you an idea of 087, which makes it compatible with the 071 aspiration catheters. And this delivers essentially anywhere and everywhere to the petrous and cavernous. So a lot more navigable than the original balloon guides, which were rather stiff. And that has changed the way these catheters behave. And so really makes it a lot larger ID, more flexible catheter. And there's a lot of very good data to suggest shorter procedure times, better clinical outcome, better recanalization, better first pass rates in a variety of different publications when balloon guide was used. Not this particular one, but a balloon guide was used. So I think the big reluctance in balloon guide use was primarily because they were hard to deliver. This balloon guide can now be delivered, and I'll share with you a little bit where it can even be delivered radio. The Tiger is the newest one that just got approved in the United States. It's a expandable stent retriever. And the concept is that you go across the clot with a microcatheter, deploy it, and now you can reduce or expand based on this hand control and use that in combination to be able to pull it back, usually with an aspiration catheter right next to it. And so it works with all the other sort of devices. The good thing here is that it comes with a size that was previously impossible. And that's the Tiger 13. So this is a study that was done in the United States that resulted in approval that compared to historical control, the Tiger Retriever had a superior first pass effect and a clear improvement compared to historical control. The cool thing here is that you can now start taking the Tiger 13, which is a 1.3 French system, all the way out to the most distal circulations. And so this is really the imaginable value where you can see the Tiger 13 now goes through a 1013 inch to 0165. So this you could potentially put through a marathon or duo, the longer duo as well, for those really distal locations. And so that is the value by a whole new class of these adjustable ones where you can adjust the size depending on whether it's an ICA all the way to M4, where this could be effective. And I think that opens up these. Should we go after these vessels or not? I think we'll have to wait for trial, but the data suggests they may be helpful. On the aspiration side, also there's innovation. So these catheters keep getting larger and larger and larger and larger. And because flow is proportional to the fourth power of the radius, that small change can make a massive impact on the amount of force which is being optimized. So in the same vein, the MIVI guys have made a new catheter, which is a telescopic extension from the balloon guide or the guide catheter itself. So the OD that fits this is 8.8. So now you're using the entire lumen of 088 catheter. So you can imagine here is our 88 guide, and this is just a telescopic extension of that system, which really allows you to maximize. Now, where does this make a difference? Because traditionally, the whole catheter lumen constricts the value. However, with the MIVI, because you have a larger bore, that potentially can improve the flow through the system, and there's a clear improvement in the flow rate. The question is, does that impact vacuum? Well, vacuum is usually not absolute, but the vacuum is only determined by the size of the interface. And so the flow and vacuum are two different sides of a coin, and while I think there is massive value on Q3, I think once you get to the 71, there may not be as much value on the 71. But I think what this technology allows us to do is to open up the distal vasculature for thrombectomy in a safe way. So, and then the newest iteration that has just gone through the first in man is this wonderful idea of using a funnel to expand the tip at the distal end of the aspiration catheter, again, to facilitate aspiration by a larger ID, because again, remember, vacuum's force is dependent on the size of the opening, so cross-sectional area is much larger here, but also to facilitate retrieval, and then the collaterals are not being affected as much because you are doing the flow arrest at the site of the occlusion rather than down in the neck. So multiple value propositions here, I think, that are worth considering. And here's the stent retriever being deployed and being pulled back. The idea being that there is the funnel there and you're pulling it back into a more proximal location. Can this technology reliably go into the MCA for more distal locations? I think that is something we'll have to see. So I think there is value in reducing fragmentation, improved collateral flow, and there are now new devices with stent retrievers as well. This is the NEVA, which is made out of Vasalio. And the way it's designed is that these are initially you trap and then you drop. So the concept is trap and drop. So when you drag the clot, it drops into an open zone and therefore makes it easier to retrieve even with harder fibrinous clots. Here's some first in man data that was demonstrated out of the group out of Vall d'Hebron in Barcelona. And this really shows, again, quite effective in terms of revascularization. So there are a large number of trials which are going on in the United States. The NEVA stent trial that I just shared with you has started. The Tiger just got completed, got approval. We have PROST, which is by Phoenox, the Preset, and Catch View Mini by Bolt, which is called Trust, which are just getting started as well. PROST is well on its way. EVAC is a trial started for the R4Q aspiration system alone, rather than just adjunctive with stent retriever, where the approval is right now. And then DAISY is this novel distal embolic protection / retriever concept that goes well with the R4Q, which is being developed as well for a trial. There are randomized trials going on as well. The Endolo and Tesla are two device agnostic trials looking at low NIH and low aspect scores for Endolo and low aspect alone for Tesla. So I think there's a lot that's going on. In the last couple of minutes, I just want to show you a couple of cases. This is the Walrus balloon guide, 70-year-old who comes in. There's the M1 occlusion with a large volume, which is available. And this is now being radial access. We get access, we size the vessel, and then we put these stiff wires and dilators. It's a 6 French dilator. And over that, we deliver the Walrus. There's the Walrus sitting in the distal cervical. And then the thrombectomy is performed standardly. And now there is no issue in terms of size because you have standardized it and the patient does well. Here is another example of a tiger retriever. I shared this with you. 59-year-old presents with right MC occlusion. Tiger retriever is being deployed. A standard femoral approach in this case. You cross the lesion, and then now the tiger has been deployed, and now you can see how nicely you can manipulate it. And again, see how we are using this in conjunction with an aspiration catheter. So there's the balloon guide, there's the aspiration catheter, there's the tiger retriever, and now you're gradually advancing it till you feel you have it, and then you pull it out together with revascularization with minimal stroke. You know, there is the final runs right here. Looks very nicely opened up, and the patient does very well. And for my last little case, I want to show you this is the left distal, you'd say M3 occlusion. So let's start by what we did here. So this is, there it is. You can see the M3 occlusion. This is the track star. We go up with the zoom catheter. We have crossed the lesion. Now the zoom is being advanced up into this. This is the track star, which is 088. Zoom is 55. There it's being deployed. And now track star is being advanced all the way to distal M1. As we are withdrawing it, now when we withdraw it, we do another run, and we realize we have distal occlusion, which has now moved forward there. So now next we go to a 45 system, and now the 45 is being advanced. There you can see the 45 being advanced over microcatheter wire. There now is the 45. Again, track star is brought up into the MCA just easily because as you're pulling it back, it just rides up by itself. And we now pull this back and we do another run. And now we have occlusion even farther distal. So now we go up with the MIVI because that's where the traditional catheters really start running out of volume. And once we have this in place, now there is the MIVI just over a wire by itself. There is the catheter just going up by there. There you can see going all the way up till there. And track star is down here. We're leaving the track star this time all the way down. Here we did not bring it up. And this is being pulled all the way back. So remember, this is a telescopic extension of the catheter. So the proximal end of this 3 max is the 088 fitting. And now you have completely revascularized Siddiqui 2C, and the patient has an exceptional outcome. So thank you very much. I appreciate this opportunity, and hopefully I was able to share something worthwhile with you. Have a good conference.